when we set this webinar, it was back in November, I believe, or maybe as early December, but the Max, which is the newest product, wasn't launched yet. So none of the slides cover Max. We are talking mostly about the EVO 2 V3 products, but feel free to ask your questions about Max, and I know John is planning on touching on it as well. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, John is trying to work on getting his webcam up. He's using a Blackmagic camera, and so he's trying to make that work with the GoToWebinar stuff. So I have my camera off as well right now, but know that I'm here and ready to share a video if John gets his up. So we'll just kind of be flexible as we go with that. Again, today, first webinar of the year for me, and Autel, obviously, you know, I see Autel as having a huge amount of potential to serve the drone industry for a number of different reasons, and their technology is really good. And in the drone industry, like, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really add up or doesn't meet what par should be for drone operators, and Autel does provide one of these airframes that can do a lot of things and meet the needs for most drone operators. So I think that exposing more people to the Autel experience, talking about the technology, what separates it, and what you can expect in using it is kind of the objective here. So John, how's the video looking on your end, or are you there?
I am here. I am here. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you just fine. And if you guys can't hear John, he did just speak. Just make sure that you put it in either the question thing or a chat, just so we know that you can hear John as well. But I would assume they can hear what I can hear, and everything sounds good on my end. John, as always, we've known each other for probably 7 or 8 years, and it's always a pleasure talking with you and getting your insight. So I appreciate you making the time to be on this webinar and talking more about Autel and the technology you guys are producing.
Well, absolutely. As mentioned, listening to your intro, am having a little problem with the webcam, but you know, go to technical stuff. That's what it is. So we'll just try to get around it, and hopefully not too boring, just looking at slides. So everybody, just listen to the conversation if we can't get that going, and that's okay. And then we've got a lot of great information to cover, Randall. And again, thank you so much for having myself and Autel here to talk a little bit about the EVO 2.
Definitely, and like you're mentioning, we are going to focus largely on EVO 2, and I know that your marketing team sent me some Max stuff, and I was like, no problem, because you said you would maybe have one with you that you could kind of
point. The camera was working, I could show you some stuff. So as we're talking, I'm just going to kind of keep working it and see if I can get it working.
Exactly, and when we get to that point, when we're talking about Max, I mean, we'll do everything we can to give you guys as illustrative as possible about what the product is. If you haven't seen it, maybe go to Autel's website and just look at Max and what it is, because it is their newest launch product as of last week, right, John?
Yep, that's right. So there's tons of stuff we can talk about, but yeah, we'll concentrate a little bit on the V3 and kind of a little bit what those changes were. Yeah, I'll let you take it from there. Also, side note, because we do have probably a lot going on in the chat, I've got Joe Scaparata, my lead sales guy, Dragonfish guy, V3 guy, pretty much the consortium at all, also in the chat. So if there's any questions that he can answer that I can't do live, or if there's any chat questions that you see, Randall, that needs some attention, just let us know. And but as well, I've got Joe in the chat as well, just trying to respond as quickly as possible.
Perfect, sounds good. And yeah, I'm looking at the chat or the questions that are coming in, and we'll make sure that we get to those at the end or as we go through these things. And John and I talked about, as we brainstorm this webinar, we've done enough of these things and talked to each other enough that it doesn't really require a lot of structure, but we're going to use the slides as kind of guiding the conversation. If there's anything that you guys really want to have covered in depth, please let us know, because I think that we could be flexible. This isn't scripted or anything like that. So I'm Randall Warnas, been in the drone industry going on 9 years, which usually sounds like a lot until I'm in a room with John McBride. John, do you want to talk a little bit about your background, just for anyone that maybe isn't informed of what your history in the drone space?
There's a lot, Randall. Yeah, no, I just kind of started as a RC hobbyist. I've loved that since I was a kid. This kind of at the beginning of the drone industry, where I kind of started, you know, kind of considering what a drone was really putting autonomous flight controllers, things that made it stable, way different than flying an RC jet, a plane, a helicopter, and things like that. So I kind of moved it. They kind of parallel each other as time went on. You've got a remote, you're controlling something remotely, whether it's remote sensing, pictures, imagery, anything like that. It absolutely fascinated me over time. So as we got into a little bit more me custom building aircraft back in, you know, 2001 and 2, we moved into some of the companies then starting out creating products that were much easier to get out to the masses, if you will. It made it a lot easier on my job as well, because I didn't have to spend as much time trying to build a drone from ground zero. So I've worked with all the major companies, and at one point or another became a reseller for DJI, Intel, all others at ARMUS, and then transferred over as training, basically the head of training, to bring that scope of understanding your equipment that you purchase and buy, and kind of put a training program together for Autel. So that's why I initially showed up here, was to put a training regiment together. And Dragonfish, which is our, you know, VTOL product, kind of demands a little bit of understanding about that equipment. So I kind of started there. We've of course made other training that kind of falls into the, you know, the EVO 2, Nano Light, you know, is kind of getting familiar with your stuff. But I've really put more of a certification, if you will, to the Dragonfish. So that's kind of where I was at with Autel, and now continue to move forward with you know, spreading the love with Autel products, and we've got so many other things coming online. So
sounds good. Appreciate that, John. So Autel, for those that don't know, have been in the drone space for quite a while. I remember in 2015 was my first CES in the drone space, and seeing Autel there as early as that with the X-Star. Autel has developed a number of products over time, and still participates in both consumer and enterprise space. John, I recently heard a rumor, and I'm just asking for current where status is on that. Autel still intends to kind of play in both realms, the consumer and the enterprise space, as far as you're aware, right?
Yeah, so I mean, when you really kind of, you know, this has always been a conversation, Randall, of what enterprise is, what consumer is. And sometimes when we make products, doesn't matter who it is, you know, when we make a product that might be more consumer idealistic, we still have people that are enterprise customers that buy those products and require enterprise level support, training, understanding, and continual hand-holding, if you will. And yeah, we want them to really understand. And the consumer, you know, Best Buy, Walmart, wherever you pick up your stuff, you know, kind of just takes it back to the guy in the blue shirt if there's a problem, and they try to help. But they're likely pointing them to the manufacturer to get some help. So in regards to consumer versus enterprise, we do play in both spaces, but we also really can recognize the difference between our customers. You know, a lot of our customers, at least here in the United States, are dealers. Those dealers deal with the end user, whether they define as consumer or not. There we are. So we kind of play in both fields, which gets a little fun, if you will, but we try to keep that customer service level as best as we can, handling all of it together. And you know, I got a lot of work to do on the customer service. We had only, if you look at the timeline, at any one time, we always had just one product out in the field. And that's really easy to support when you only have one or two products out in the field. Now that we've kind of expanded quite a bit, we've got Dragonfish, we've got EVO 2 in many different flavors, we've got now the Max approaching, and we'll continue expanding our team here in the United States to support that. So we'll likely still continue to make the Light and the Nano, and it was a chance to kind of do so last year at CES when we announced it, and seeing how the market is playing with it. So
perfect. And I think that when we talk about EVO, what we're talking about today, EVO 2 V3, we're generally talking about the enterprise versions of the products, but there are these other, you know, the Light and the Nano that you mentioned that are being used for industrial applications as well as prosumer and consumer type stuff. But when you joined Autel, I know that Dragonfish was a big reasoning for that, and Dragonfish has evolved over time into a number of different things. And because we're talking mostly about EVO on this webinar, I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of throw out for Dragonfish, what are the main use cases for Dragonfish, and what do you see about that technology specifically that sets it apart and makes you excited about being part of the Autel organization?
Well, yeah, let's start there. So first time I ever seen it was the first time, you know, you come to the office to introduce me to, you know, at the time, Max and Gary, and kind of show me this brand new product that Autel had. And, you know, again, I'm a drone creator, maker, you know, work with the manufacturers to try to improve the product for the use case. And there was many a times I was requested to basically take a drone that was intended to do mapping and make it into what the Dragonfish shines for, public safety, ISR, SSR, all of these different applications for primarily public safety. And some of the challenges in using something that was made to do something else is that, you know, integration is complicated. Trying to put tracking zoom cameras and have this, no, it came up, and here you are talking about it. I'm excited about it because of what I saw potential on how we could apply it to public safety. So, and the other piece of this was, you know, what else? What other verticals could we look at? You know, long distance train, you know, rail inspections or pipeline things. You know, there's all these possibilities. But overall, you know, the Dragonfish standard, flying for an hour and a half over the top of a burning house or structure, or trying to find somebody for an extended amount of time, is where we win. The second part is just the taking off and landing. There are a lot of challenges with foam airplanes getting pushed by 20-mile-an-hour wind to try and keep themselves stable. And I've certainly put it in some pretty precarious conditions, you know, to kind of take off and land and operate in high wind. So both of those were specific needs. And then the third one was just the tracking capability, being able to take away the concept of having an operator having to fly the drone and a separate operator trying to manage the camera. And so when I saw those two as well, being that it's a one-man show, you can have an observer, of course, if you need it for the application. But, you know, now you're allowing the aircraft to manage all things flying, and you as the pilot are concentrating, which is what public safety primarily does, because they're making decisions based on real-time information. You know, the guy just went in the house and informs everybody. The person is your unit is too close to whatever, and they inform. So they're making real-time decisions. And we kind of see a lot of, you know, filming is not real-time decision making. You know, that they want to get the shot, sure, but it's not a, you know, a 100% decision to get that data, and that's the deliverable. So anyway, enough about Dragonfish, but overall, highly impressed with the aircraft. Saw as much as training as I saw, then creating our manufactured certified operator training. So you can't use the Dragonfish unless you've been trained by us or an approved trainer. And the dealers that are currently selling them have those approved trainers. So
right.
And
so,
you just have to put that, you've got to put that layer in there. You can't just, you know, here's your drone that's $100,000 and good luck, you know.
Right. So as we're standing in an airfield in Utah together looking at Dragonfish, I think that Dragonfish really shows what Autel is capable of. And I think that because we're talking mostly about EVO, which I'm going to kind of start progressing into that space, so many drone manufacturers are missing benchmarks that are set by, you know, leaders in the drone manufacturing space as far as range, as far as image quality, as far as price point. And Autel seems to keep up with that and exceed it in some cases. But the Dragonfish really shows that Autel is able to also lead in a significant way in development and innovation within the unmanned space. And VTOLs aren't necessarily what you're going to see everybody using. It's not going to be a quantity game. But it does show that Autel has made significant investments in order to be a leader in the drone space. I think that that's why this conversation is so important, is talking about what that potential looks like.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to I don't want to give the perspective that I sidebarred any of the quad designs that we have, but they're quad designs. They already have a huge amount of people that know how to operate that. They know how to run that. They can stop on a dime. They can turn in circles. They can do all that. No, this is a big flying airplane that happens to have that capability, and you have to kind of understand those limitations, not just where you're flying, but how to actually proceed in flying and operating safely. Moving at 45 miles an hour continuously, and you're kind of the bank turns and everything 300, 400 feet. You've got to kind of anticipate how to operate, and as well understand what you're doing with the camera. So the technology here, the data transmission here, all of this autonomy built in kind of play into how we're looking at future designs as well. So it's all a big madness, but it's certainly fun to be involved in. I can tell you that.
Sure. So when your marketing team sent me over some slides to look at to kind of build this out, I think one of the most important conversations is, first, what makes the V3 EVO 2 different from the V2? And here is a side-by-side chart comparing the two, so that you can kind of make some inferences on your own. But if you, John McBride, were to say why you would have a V3 and set that apart from someone that has a V2, what are the key factors that make them different?
Well, you can go into the technical thing, and we can all see this on the page, but this has always got to be addressed on why we made the changes in the first place, and that's kind of a contribution to the conversation. So V1 comes out, great drone. Everybody seems to be having a great time with it. V1 has a chip issue that could not, we all know about it, global, whatever. And in order to continue creating the demand for the EVO 2, V2 was created. And the V2 chipset, also seemed to be kind of a short-term process to kind of get to where we are now with the V3. And when you look at the technical advantages with that chipset on the V3, now we have the opportunity to do a lot of things. Now, if you have a V2, the flying of it, the operation of it, all of it's pretty much very similar to what the V3 does. It's just that we are now opening a door a little bit more because we have this chipset to be able to integrate into other things. And this is very similar chipsets to what are going in the Dragonfish, and we're processing video transmission. All of this has to be done. So I don't want to be insensitive to the fact that maybe people have bought V2s thinking that it would act like a V3, but that is kind of the way the manufacturing had to be done. And I can apologize. I apologize, for that. Right. We're not always in control of that, but let's look at, again, some of the advantages of the V2 versus V3, and just what that chipset is capable of offering, so that people understand that. And if you go back to that previous slide, you can see, just in the 640T, we have processing going on. So the 640T on the V2 versus the V3, we have much better processing capability to take the live image that you're looking at to make it look better on the screen. And that is a really good thing for, again, public safety, inspection, things like that, making real-time data decisions based on what they see. So if we can clean that up a little bit for them, and not have them make a guess on what they're looking at, that's super helpful. We have also the CMOS sensor, which is got a little bit better ISO. So this helps out with what we call night mode. And night mode is definitely, you can change your ISO settings and everything else to try to see into those dark spaces. And even for videographers, they can go ahead and do that, kind of take a look at that capability. And finally, still another high ISO on the 1-inch sensor. Other things that kind of happened, 900 megahertz was added. We were able to put this in, kind of an auto decision on the drone, connecting very well. This just helps out with not just range. You know, people want to fly far. Sure, they ask me how far does it go, but it's the fidelity of the information coming back to you that's really important. You know, making sure that that we don't lock up the screen and not have command and control of the aircraft at all times. So at short range.
Right.
But yeah, 9.3 transmission range as far as that goes. So
yeah, well beyond visual line of sight, which honestly is not seen by every drone manufacturer. So especially the fidelity you're talking about. So I think that there is also discussion about when we talk about EVO 2 that there are payload options. And do you want to talk about kind of like whether they're interchangeable payloads, because Autel in the past has made payloads to where you pop one off and put another on with the V3 EVO 2, and also just kind of what options there are. I mean, you and I know them well enough, but maybe we should share what the flavors are that are available through Autel.
I think there's a love-hate relationship in the ability to change your own payload on something so small. Love the capability because it is a small drone, only one of its kind that can be set up for mission-specific, you know, applicate. You know, we're going to run 640 today. Hey, we've got to do nice imagery and pictures tomorrow. You know, and it's the only drone that I know of that you can do this with. Otherwise, you do have to buy another drone, a separate unit, separate spot. So for a money savings to some degree, this could be a positive thing. Let's get this initially. We can buy separate payloads. We can, again, set it up mission specific. One thing to be careful on is that, you know, it isn't toolless, you know, so you have to have the proper tools. You kind of have to think ahead a little bit on what you're going to do. And maybe sometimes it is better to have two separate machines with two separate payloads, depending on the application, of course. Of the three chassis that we have here, the standard, the dedicated RTK, and the enterprise. Let me just kind of clarify this. So we have a standard airframe, which does not include any of the accessories, and we call this the Pro, if you will, when it's coupled with the 6K camera. RTK is specifically that application to connect to N-Trip or to a base station to do mapping, and can utilize any of the payloads as well. Enterprise itself, slightly different airframe. It's got a little bit longer arms, carbon fiber arms, and as well has a little bit different prop design. The stator of the motors are a little bit different, so it requires a prop that's different. And the enterprise version does have all accessories available. So, you know, the speaker, the spotlight, and the RTK. And next line that we're looking at here is all of the payload capabilities that are indeed interchangeable with V3 payloads. Please make sure people don't mess that one up, Randall. If you have a V2 payload, it will not communicate, you know, or work with a V3 chassis. Just keep that in mind because of the chipset that's there. So all batteries will still work, other things will still work, you know, props from all will work, chargers, all of the most accessories. But when we interchange payloads, you just have to make sure you've got the appropriate payload that works with the V3 specifically.
Really good note. Perfect. So talking about accessories, I think that's one area that Autel has really made some significant innovations, and so we are going to step through some of the things that compatibility wise that are there, as well as some of the feature improvements that have been made. So first I want to start with the smart controller. Throughout the drone industry, there's definitely like a ladder of really good controllers and really bad controllers. You, John McBride, having flown so many different things, where do you rate the current smart controller for Autel products, and can you talk through V2 to V3, what smart controllers work with what, so that is clear to anybody on the call?
Yeah, we made it fairly easy for people to recognize which one they have as far as the smart controller is concerned. So we have two separate smart controllers as far as physical differences. So we have a smaller SE and we have a larger standard, right? So we'll speak of the standard first, then I'll get into the SE. So the standard has, you know, this great display. It has the ability to show on the screen using Explorer app. It isn't, you know, super confusing with how you kind of manage the UI. And I like the physical size. I think a lot of people have really, enjoyed the ergonomic feel of it, you know, overall. And that's the bigger one. We do, again, have to be a little careful when we buy smart controllers that they are compatible with the version that you have. So there is a V1 version, a V2 version, a V3 version, and on the back of the remotes are ways to indicate that. However, I do need to help my dealers a little bit, make sure that they're sending and asking the right questions before somebody just presses a button and gets the wrong one. But what's out in the channel right now to try and purchase or buy are all V3 incoming. We don't have that many V2s. Just again, you just want to make sure that you got the right one that works with your compatible chassis. With that being said, SE. So the SE, we would kind of initially consider this to be a consumer level product. However, it does work with all of our V3 units. And the idea also is to have it compatible with the Lite and the Nanos. This is still working in the mix. Hopefully we can see that here in the near future for a small smart controller that is still just a full package. You don't have to worry about your phone. You don't have to worry about cables. It's all right there in a very small package. A little bit of the transmission. So the 9.3 transmission is V3 numbers. Still have really good data transmission with the 2 and the 1, but that is with that new chipset. We can always, you know, we're doing frequency hopping between all 3 frequencies, 2, 4, 5, 8, and 900. And on the SE controller, it has a removable and replaceable battery. So the bigger one does not have that, but you can, you know, charge while operating, which is something I've had to do many a times while doing testing and training. So, that's yeah.
On here, it doesn't really say anything about as far as the battery life goes. Do you have any off the top numbers what someone could expect so they could compare that to other things that are out in the world?
Ranging from 4.5 to 8.5 hours, depending on, you know, and it is a range, but it's a pretty broad range. But you know, with the swappable battery idea, you can definitely pull the battery, put a new battery, restart your unit, no problem with the SE. Remember, swappable battery, removable batteries on the SE version.
Not on the standard, right?
Not on the standard. That is correct.
Perfect. Next, so there's a few things as I've been kind of connected to the Autel world. One of the things that I think is very under celebrated or maybe just not talked about much is the pre-recording thing. I remember when that first kind of came to my attention, I thought it was really impressive. And so do you want to talk about that first as like a feature that Autel has that I think is still solely unique in the drone space?
I think it's solely unique as well. I've not heard of anybody saying that other drones do this, but you know, also we're really good at making tech, but not really good at promoting such things. You know, all of a sudden you find out they're like, what does it do? Holy crap, that's amazing. You know, so this is one of them. The 30-second pre-record, you know, it has a memory in which it's watching everything. So when you press the button, you can choose it as an option to record 30 seconds before. How does this apply to doing things? Now, again, kind of a little bit more public safety focused. They don't like to record the whole time they're flying. You know, they want to be able to kind of manage that to some degree. It eats up a lot of card space just of when you take off, fly for 30 minutes and just recording the whole time. Plus it gives you a mess of video that has to be reviewed. Now you can do it, but again, it just eats up a lot of data storage when you've got multiple cameras, as well as the possibility of having, you know, having to go back through it. And when you don't or forgot and didn't press the button, you have that confidence of seeing something that happened, pressing the record button and saving back that 30 seconds. As long as you can remember to press the record button when the event happens, you know, as long as that happens. So I, yes, believe that this is the only drone that does that in the market right now. I'm not sure of any others that do it. So.
Right. And the other two that were listed here, the stealth mode stuff where you could turn off all lights, I think that that's pretty self-explanatory that you can do it and you could probably understand why you do it. And then there's the encryption portion of this. Now, I think that it doesn't need to be overstated, but Autel has put a significant amount of effort in protecting data. I know the amount of kind of strain that puts on conversations about drones of small size used in areas like critical infrastructure and public safety. Do you have anything to add to that as far as the efforts that have been put in by Autel to protect data?
Yeah, and I think, yes, yeah. And again, we'll break it into two parts. So part number one is that any data that is streaming from the drone down to the ground can be captured, is what everybody thinks, and somehow taken so that other people can see it. It's impossible. I mean, it's not something so easy to do. So that is that 128 encryption between transmission of aircraft to the remote, and very difficult to try and break or even see. I mean, it's very difficult. With that being said, the second part is the media storage. So in some cases, we can log in, we try to then protect that media storage. We don't want people to see that information that got recorded. And again, this is a safety feature for public safety in mind, or other things. We don't want people to see that. So you have to have the drone that you recorded with then have an encryption layer on it so that only that drone can read that card. And so for an example, again, let's apply it. We'll send it out, it's doing its mission, it crashes. Some guy picks it up and finds the SD card, and he will not be able to even view it until then. Now we go into the third piece. I said two, but we'll go into the third piece, and that is the data in which is leaving the drone to do analysis, firmware update changes, things like that. Whenever we connect a drone in the United States here to get those updates or send information, number one, I have to have your authorization to do it. The drone doesn't do it on its own. It's got to be authorized to do it. That's number one. Number two, when it recognizes that it's in a connected to the internet here in the United States, it reaches out to look for the firmwares, and those firmwares are located here in the United States on servers as well. The pass-through of information is blocked right there. It can't go any further until, again, you authorize it to happen. So we have to, whenever we ask for flight logs, this ends up being a little bit more complicated in our technology or process, because the user has to kind of jump in there and do and pull and get, because we're trying to protect that as much as possible. If you want the easy button to just not have to worry about it, sure, that's what everybody wants. But in order to really protect it, you have to do other measures that we have, put in there to kind of not get your information. We don't want to see it. We don't need it until we need it for crash or kind of figuring out what's going on with stuff. So
right, perfect. So another thing that is a accessory or feature, you mentioned it, the speaker. I guess so. I saw the name EVO 2 Explorer. Is EVO 2 Explorer just the speaker?
Explorer is the app. Explorer is the app. So okay. With the EVO 2 Explorer app allows the user broadcast live instead of just pre-recorded. So it's a push to talk idea. You press the button, you can talk into the remote. It then gives commands to the drone and then puts that out. So other competitors just have a pre-record. They don't have a press to talk option. So that's a really good one for live broadcast.
Perfect. And then probably the accessory that has the most, like, I'll say hair around it, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but LiveDeck has been a thing that is really valuable, really useful. Autel has, again, innovated in a very important way around this, but with the version changes, LiveDeck has become a little bit of a question mark of what works with what has compatibility. And somebody also asked this in the chat already, but can you talk about what LiveDeck does first and foremost, and then talk about how V2, V3 how you do that dance with the compatibility.
Okay, sure. So when EVO 2 V1 was introduced, we had LiveDeck introduced with it. What this allowed us to do, or allowed the user to do, is set up LiveDeck at a separate space. The connection was far away if you wanted to. For an example, a command center, or even a guy that just didn't want people hovering over the top of him while he was operating. You know, here's your LiveDeck. Look at it on this TV over here. What we did here was, again, other competitors use their remotes to do this. So you'd have to have a full remote connected to the drone, and we eliminated the remote idea. Is that you just had to have the box, the antennas, and a binding process to the drone initially. This really did help a lot with trying to get that information back to command centers, back to the director of photography, whoever, without the operator being involved, you know, with that. It also removed the idea of having to be hardlined to the command center. So we just optimized it. The idea was to optimize the hardware so that it could be used this way and not necessarily provide a screen on the hardware, but output it to a big screen. We could Ethernet it to a server, or we could USB it in and have command and control to some degree, you know, change some settings of the output. We've stayed with all of that. Everything else is exactly the same, if not a little bit more. And the more in the V3 is basically being able to connect LiveDeck 2 to multiple aircraft in the V3 and others. So LiveDeck is also compatible with Dragonfish, you know. So there's a lot of things that have kind of happened there. So we've got, again, Ethernet output, USB-A outputs, but mostly everybody uses HDMI out to a big screen wherever LiveDeck is sitting. So frequency stuff, the battery life, you can still have it sit as a separate item, not plugged in, but a lot of the IC guys I've seen, or the incident command units that are using LiveDeck, have already got a USB connected and just kind of leave it running all the time, you know, while charging. So so just as a battery life, you've got that 5-hour battery life if you want it, IP rated if you need it, and definitely a high transmission range to connect.
So just in compatibility terms, V2 does it work with LiveDeck 2, and V3 does it work with LiveDeck 2?
So V1 and V2 do not work with LiveDeck 2.
Okay.
Nothing confusing, but yes, we have LiveDeck 1 that works only with V1, and then we have LiveDeck 2 that only works with the V3s. So just to keep that very clear.
Perfect. So next, you had mentioned the night mode, or you know, the ISO improvements. Here we have side by sides as far as image quality, and I think that here it's relatively clear. I think the next one, I'm just going to skip to the next one. Here it's less, like, fewer artifacts, I guess, in night mode. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think just within the bottom image is that, you know, when you look at just around the shadowing of the vehicles, or you look at the top of the garage itself, you know, kind of what shows up in patterns that doesn't show up for one versus the other. You know, yeah. That's really what you're looking at. Is just
perfect. And then,
better
go ahead.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's kind of what you're looking at.
Here, I think it's way more pronounced when we talk about low light between the 640Ts of V2 and V3. Night and day difference is almost too appropriate of a pun to use, but it's significant. Is there any drawbacks to having this sort of low light capability with the V3?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because, you know, here it's great when the ambient conditions are what we're looking at, when the ambient conditions. However, if I've got it all super high and I go down, so we're looking at the video right now, and if I go down in that backyard where that bright light is on the right, everything will be very overblown, you know, because it's really bright. And so you have to kind of manage that to some degree. So it depends on that ambient light initially to get a, you know, high up shot or a high up view. But when you get down into where it is bright, move the drone closer, you have to kind of readjust a little bit so it doesn't overblow everything, you know. So that's really the only thing I see as a use case. Otherwise, the V3s that we've had out in the field for sample units, everybody has been highly impressed with this capability.
Yeah, I think public safety, especially needing to have context outside of thermal, but being able to see a subject running around in this kind of environment, it's
like you said, you know, when you have a thermal payload connect, you know, when you have the 640T that has both payloads, both imagers, you bring that up. Thermal is not always the best to use, and having to jump over to the night mode version allows you to see and verify a little bit better, you know. So
yeah, exactly. Perfect. Then, so when we talk about thermal, you and I have been both messing around with thermal drones for as long as they've really been a thing. What improvements are we seeing here? Because I see kind of a crispness, and is that artificial crispness? Is that some sort of overlay that's giving this? What kind of improvements were made and why were they made?
Well, let's talk about the FLIR stuff, you know, basically the thermal stuff. You know, everybody relates FLIR to being thermal. You know, does it have FLIR camera? Does it have this? And what we have, you know, all sensor manufacturers, this includes FLIR, work with third party to some degree to get the software to actually take the information and display it well. You know what I mean? And when you have a breakdown a little bit of, yes, it's the 640 versus the 640, but you don't have good software and or processing capabilities, then you kind of end up with kind of a blurry or not very, you know, misrepresentation of the actual sensor. So because again, we were capable of having a processor that's able to output, is it better because the sensor is better? No. The sensor is the same sensor, but the software that the chip is able to process is better. So this gives us a little bit better sharpness, contrast, other things that the software before could not do, you know. So it's still the same sensor, and just in regards to it making it look like a better imaging, because you asked, is it fake? No, it's just how it's processed, the same information and how you put it through to see it real time. And that's really important to understand, that you know, we're not taking away or adding anything on the hardware side. We are improving what the software is capable of seeing. And nothing against, you know, FLIR themselves, but there are sometimes people have come back to us and said, well, why does my FLIR image look like this and my 640T image looks like this? And that does have a lot to do with that software problem. So.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, and then another thing that was brought up kind of in your materials that were sent over to me is this thermal slider. Now, looking at these pictures, this was supposed to be enough for me to understand it, and I looked at it and I was like, I've looked at a lot of thermal stuff. I don't necessarily see it in this image alone. So can you explain what the thermal slider is and how it works?
Yeah, so on the right of the first image, we can see this little drop down. And what we're doing is we have the fire look up at the top. We have RGB or an eyeball down at the bottom, exactly right there. So when we are using this tool within the system on picture-in-picture, what we're doing is changing the opaqueness of that image. So do you want it hard thermal overall, or do you want to lessen that a little bit so that you have more RGB coming through that section? And so on the right image, you can see that we've kind of lowered that a little bit, and what is coming through is mostly RGB and not as much of the thermal information. So it's just being able to bring that I don't know, capability, again, a little bit more of the, you know, verifying information. I see thermal, let's back it up. Okay, it's a red car. You know, you can't see if it's a red car in thermal. So you're able to just kind of choose that back and forth. So that's what the slider does. It changes whether it stays opaque or not within the image.
So it's an overlay, but basically because of what we would talk about in FLIR terms as MSX, but in this case it's different slightly. You would, in this image on the right, if there were lettering or a license plate or something, you would see it more of what's in that visible light spectrum than you would on the thermal spectrum, correct?
That is correct. However, if you look at the left, you can see a little bit of that MSX capability. And we know what that means, you and I, but a lot of people do not know what that means. Well, again, we are able to take a little bit of that outlining of images and spots and kind of put it on the screen in thermal as well.
For sure. Like you're seeing this line here. The reason that you see kind of an outline of it here is because paint does heat or cool differently at a different rate than things that are unpainted. And so you do see a little bit of color differentiation here, but here you actually see that white line. You also see the texture of the trees much more defined because this is showing the RGB spectrum with the thermal overlay.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's actually interesting how well you can see these parking divider lines over here. Anyway, cool.
Yeah, it's very, it's again, how do you apply the tool is always what it is. We create something and how do you apply that? The 30-second recording, how do you apply that? So that's my job, is to try and help people understand a little bit of the tools and how you would apply it. Now, there's always super creative people in this industry that figure out how to do something on their own. And that's always, hey, I took this tool, I ended up using it this way, and I personally wouldn't have ever thought of that to be a use case, which they find out kind of on their own. And I think that's spectacular because it broadens what the engineers thought they were doing right. And then we explain it, and then you have somebody else who's like, no, it works so much better, doing this. And I think that's always great for the industry overall to kind of get that perspective from the users overall all the time.
So. Agreed. So I have this slide just kind of showing pricing, and I don't really know the best place to have the discussion about the Mac. So I'm going to go over this briefly. Then I'm going to go to the next slide, which is just our faces with our emails, and we'll talk about Macs because we don't have any visual assistance on it based off of the slide deck. And I'm guessing your video is still down, so we're just gonna.
Yeah, it's still down. I have to install a bunch of stuff. I apologize, guys.
Yeah, I don't think it's not a problem. So what I will say is that we, DSLRPros Enterprise UAS, we are a partner with Autel, and we do sell their stuff. If you're looking to get a drone, or you're looking to get an accessory, or you're looking for any further questions to be answered after this webinar about our products, you can reach out to sales@dslrpros.com. You can reach out to me personally, which I'll share my email shortly. But one question that has come up before we even did this webinar, and as we go through this webinar, is about the Macs. And pricing is one thing that I haven't seen been answered, and I don't know if you're prepared for that. But let's talk about Macs from the price point that it should be set at. What makes it different from an EVO? What makes it different from everything else that's in the market? Who is the prospective Macs buyer, and when those things will be available? I'm throwing all those things out you at once because this is your time to talk Macs.
All right. So at CES, we announced the Macs, and the Macs came out with a payload called the 4T. The 4T is a thermal payload. It's got a laser rangefinder, 10 times optical zoom, and a wide camera. So under the same idea and concept of changing the payloads and or buying in combos in the future with specific payloads for the mission, that's the conceptual idea. However, the initial release is the 4T, So all together with the 4T pricing, $89.99, so $9,000. And that's inclusive of battery, chargers, chip, radio, smart. It also includes a smart controller. So all of that is inclusive in the purchase. And again, keeping with our way of doing the payload exchanges, you can buy payloads later and or buy a combo that would kind of be for that mission specific idea. Who is it for? This initial release? Yeah, I've just said it. Public safety, because mostly thermal camera inspection people, thermal camera zoom, kind of figuring out where things are for in SAR. That's all kind of falls into this, how this payload specifically works, And some of the things that were also released and talked about is communication paths. So our mesh network is going to come online here to be able to, communicate drone to drone and move information around that can keep you, which is kind of difficult to do if you don't have good, network connections, Wi-Fi, LTE or 5G or whatever it is. Trying to connect to those in certain situations can be very challenging. So in the back hills, you can have communication between drones happening and people still getting good video information where they are on the screen as far as the UI. So mesh network is another one to kind of talk about with that. We have obstacle avoidance, which has become pretty much standard on all drones now, is to have obstacle avoidance. But in the V3, we are still using the binocular, imagers, whereas in the Max, we've changed to having a fisheye lens to kind of see a little bit further and wider, and that is helpful to basically give us a full, and what we call 720 degree. I've already seen this. What does that mean, 720 degree obstacle avoidance? Well, you go in a circle around it, it covers all the way around it, rather than just, a single X or a Y. So, yeah, and I think the other things that were kind of hot topics was battery swapping. So, being able to do a hot swap on a single battery configuration is really, again, an Autel first, basically industry first, and the Max is going to be capable of doing hot swapping in the field on a single battery, and that is again very specialized application, but still very important for those that want that.
So what RC are you using with the Max, and what is the software? Is it the same Explorer app, or is it a different app that you'd be using with that?
Great question. So it's still a smart controller in the same form factor that we're using now, but we are using what we call Enterprise, Autel Enterprise app, instead of it being Explorer app. So that transition, again, allows a little bit more features and capability that the Max can do that others can't do. So it kind of required getting into a different app to be able to do that. So
gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And then the controller, the RC that you're using, is it the standard without a swappable battery, or can you use an SE type?
It is a standard, unconfirmed if we're compatible right at this moment in time with the SE.
Okay.
And again, it just kind of in initial launch, it is using the smart controller basically on a V3 level chip set, so but a little unconfirmed if it's going to work with the SE at this moment. Moment.
What about this is going to be kind of a string of things: live deck compatibility, the payloads that are kind of future looking. Is it going to be? Are you guys looking at standalone RGB payloads? Are you looking at anything more advanced? Can you tickle anything on that front, or is it kind of it is what it is as of today? So kind of accessory related questions.
Yeah, yes and a yes, and more yeses as we start to get more information. So yes, you have payloads that'll be specific for, again, maybe mapping or video or things like that. A little bit better processing that's going to be able to do higher bit rates. We'll hopefully see that. And this initial release again was just to kind of see what the market thought. Are we going the right way, right, Randall? You never know. Right. Some people build and instantly it's like, oh, that's terrible. It's not a good idea. So you kind of gauge what the market really thinks is going to be important, and then continually develop on those things.
Right. So what about remote ID with Max and with the V3 stuff, or all the EVO stuff? What is the plan for remote ID for Autel?
Great question, because this one comes up quite often in questions as well. So the V3 and the Max already have remote ID capabilities built in. V2, V1 are not compatible with built-in capability, but looking at the possible modules to be created to help with those that compliance built by Autel.
Okay, perfect. Somebody is asking, and I've been kind of going through the Q&A that have come up around Max to make it so that it's all inclusive in the Max conversation. with the payload exchange or swap on Max, is it different than the Evo? Does it require a screwdriver? Is it push button? What does the changing out of payload?
It does require a screwdriver. I apologize, I don't have my camera up and running, but there are just 2 screws to remove. Payload drops out, put back in, 2 screws to put back in. And it actually is quite simple to do that, and very quick if you have the infield tools that are necessary. Yeah.
Okay, so here's kind of a question that goes across both types of products as well, which is third-party apps. Not only is it important to understand what Autel has done to make certain third-party apps be compatible with Autel products, but also can you get these third-party apps working on the smart controllers, the SE? Like when we go through the RC range, what limitations do you have as far as third-party apps go?
Well, there's a number of ways to answer this question, but we're always looking into the partnership of working with third-party to create apps. And some of that compatibility obviously is 2 companies working with each other. You with me on that? 2 companies have to work. We can't be the only ones that say, oh, we got the stuff. We've got other companies that don't even want to try compatibility with Autel products. And that is true. They don't, and so the user is asking, well, why doesn't it work? It should be gold standard to work. And can we, so basically we have made the infrastructure on the tablet, on our smart controller to support third party should they choose to develop on it. They are then given resources from our engineering team to then also figure out what they need on the SDK. So it's not always us that is saying no, it's sometimes the third party that is like, well, it doesn't make sense for us to do it. It doesn't make sense to do this. And it's leaving those questions sometimes for the end user. And I just want to clarify that. We are more than willing to help the third parties if they're willing to invest into the time, the energy, and the resources to get it done. So, but we want to make sure that, again, does the infrastructure exist? Absolutely. We are running the most current Android on this new smart controller, V3, and the Max. So the V3 specifically will have that availability totally with our third-party app creators. Now, I don't know if you can play games on it or shoot birds and stuff, but I don't think that's going to work, or I don't advise it. But we're willing to make that switch.
So what about IP rating for Max?
IP rating is 43. That's pretty standard. I think that's not outside of the realm of what most people want to do with it. V3 is also the same. So IP ratings are very important, and being able to do stuff in the rain or sleep or conditions like that. So.
And then the last question I have on Max before we kind of maybe will try to, and John, I don't know what your time looks like. We have 2 minutes left.
I got all day, buddy. I got all day. You just keep going as long as we can answer.
Let's go for another, I think 12-15 hour time. So another 17 minutes. So we could go through as much Q&A now, so we don't have to do a big email after responding to all the ones that we left hanging. But this is the last one specifically about Max, and then we'll try to do a quick fire on some of these things. But what availability, you putting on your John McBride, I sit in the Autel chair, I talk to the Autel people. What do you think is going to be when you'll see these out in the field?
Well, realistically, the announcement, we've got prototyping going on, we've got testing going on, we've got people that are going to give us some feedback real time after this. We then, kind of take those back to the engineers, make the changes if needed, changes with whatever. So I'd expect kind of looking at end of March, April area to kind of get, initial, order releases out. And this can play a little bit. This kind of gets a little complicated in the global market because we have, this is a global market. I mean, Autel manufactures for everybody, so trying to figure out exactly those timelines get a little confusing even on our part here in the US. But overall, that is the goal, to try and have hardware and units out end of March, early April.
Right, and you just mentioned something really interesting that, being on the manufacturer side of the drone industry for as long as I have and as long as you've been working with manufacturers, is that it's not about trying to hide information, or it's not about being really bad at forecasting. It's that there are so many uncertainties when launching a new product, and you want to get it right. Now, Autel, and this is me speaking, not anyone else, but Autel could have said, look, we're going to be at CES, which is a hugely expensive show to be at, and it puts a lot of eyes on products. We want to launch it here, but we also know that where we're at in the process is that this is going to be available at a future date. And so those kind of constraints or reasons why you would announce a product at a certain time make it so that maybe the end user gets it twisted, that it's like, you know, you're not going to see these within 2 weeks, or sometimes you launch a product and it's like, yeah, it's already manufactured and ready to go. So this is more just kind of seeing, no one should take it personally or take it as a manufacturer doing something wrong by announcing a product when they announce it. That's just business reasons. And as long as things go as planned, there is a release and ship date, but those don't always work. And that goes with every manufacturer in the drone space, regardless of size and regardless of what they're manufacturing. If we're talking about software, if we're talking about accessories, everyone has things.
We've got, you know, we've also, you know, as you mentioned, you know, me being a reseller for 7 years, you know, everybody's asking, when is X that got X announced going to be available? When can I have it? I think a lot of things we just have to be kind of sensitive with the budgeting, you know, kind of things with public safety. If they find this to be a suitable tool for what they want to apply, of course they need to know when it's going to be coming so they can put in the proper dollars and put in the proper budgeting, you know, because this is sometimes has to be done a year out, you know. Right. So we do understand this, you know, but you know that the manufacturing that we are doing to try and be compliant with some level of what everybody wants, and as well trying to figure out how many, you know, thermal sensors we need to order, how many motors do we need to order, how many of that does help out. So what I could ask for, Randall, is that, you know, if people are very interested currently at the way that the Max has been presented, and as well as the V3, you know, the best thing you can do is try to get people to really, you know, understand not when it's going to get delivered, but hey, I'm dead serious, I want one. You know, I really would like to get one. It helps us really kind of define what those features need to be there upon getting your equipment, you know.
Yeah,
really.
Forecasting is extremely difficult. Somebody asked the question of
yeah, people think it's so easy, and it's like, whew, you know, it's hard to know how many to make. My analogy to this is, you know, here you know, there was this commercial that went out that a little company, about 10 people sitting in this room, and you know, they go online for the very first time, they're super excited, you know, boom, it goes online, and they see 10 orders, and everyone's all right. Then they see 100 orders. Oh man, that's fantastic, 100 orders. Then it goes to 1,000, then it goes to 10,000, it goes to 50,000. You know, it just climbs and climbs with orders today. You know, so how do you meet that demand without putting everybody on back order? And then they're all standing there going, holy crap, what do we do? You know, what do we do? So
yeah, and one of the nice things about Autel, and something that I saw in the company in previous years, is that the nice thing is that a lot of these smaller, newer companies into the drone space, they have only a certain amount of cash, and they have to allocate those towards these orders of components, and they have to, you know, really get those numbers dialed in. And one of the nice thing is that it's not that Autel is in a position where they're collecting your money to then go place the component orders. They're ordering components based off of that forecast. Now, demand does drive how much you order, and your priority in getting components is based off of largely on how many you're ordering. And so
yeah, absolutely. At least you get it. And a lot of people don't. You know, they just think that, well, they're just delaying the delay. No, there's a lot that goes on to manufacturing, and if you're not, you know, really understanding it or kind of big picture, and of course, end users might think, well, I don't care. Just tell me when it's going to come. You know, just tell me when I can get it. Tell me how much it's going to cost me and when I can get it. You know, and that's the best. We'll try to get those answers, you know, the best to people, and try to stay on.
There was a question related to kind of who's going to be selling Max, and so I'll say, you know, you're on a webinar with us, we will be representing and selling Max, but if you have a reseller that you've been working with, as long as they're selling Autel stuff, I would assume that they'll have access to Max. That's just me saying that in fairness. And then when you kind of talk about demonstrating or seeing Max in person, what areas, what places do you think there might be opportunities for demonstration directly related to Autel, where you might be, or where you might have airframes shown at trade shows or something like that over the next?
We have my current marketing manager, Peter Gosselin, is going crazy right now with all of the requests coming in, throughout a year. And as you know, trying to get all to every trade show and show every little thing, it's not even at that. For the last year and a half, I've been all over the world, just trying to show Dragonfish, just Dragonfish. So definitely feel confident that we will have, units out there. We'll try to schedule with our dealers on those events, as well as we have corporate events like CES that show, what our stuff is. So, we can put these on our calendars, if we will, kind of show where we'll participate, anticipate what we'd be showing, and have a little bit more clarity on that. But I can assure you, we have a lot of stuff coming up this year, which I'm really excited about, to be able to kind of jump around and send representatives from Autel to work with all of our good partners, as well as the end users, to get their feedback on stuff. So
for sure. And John,
very general answer, but we got a lot coming.
Yeah, I don't think you could give a more detailed answer than that. Obviously, leveraging the reseller network is where I would turn the first to getting your hands on products or getting more information, because the manufacturer has a very specific objective, is to put the product out and get information out to the largest number of people possible. And because Autel sells generally through reseller network, that's where the emphasis is going to be, is educating the resellers so that they can educate their customers as they come in. So
I mean, that's exactly why we're talking about V3, because V3 is a fairly new product for us. So, being able to make sure that Enterprise UAS and others are educated on what to sell, and DSLRPros, both of those, anyone that's kind of answering those questions is first line defense. Of course, doing these things help also with your viewership and seeing if they, what kind of questions they ask, and talking to a manufacturer directly is super helpful. So.
For sure. So here's another question, and it's kind of like a hot seat question, but kind of not actually. So when we talk about support, there have been some commentary of drone support in general over the years, where it's so hard to please every user. But in recent times, there is this question about, one, how long does Autel intend to support a product? And we're talking about Max specifically. The question from the audience is about Max specifically. But when we're talking about version changes from V1 to V2 to V3 over a period of 2 years or so, or the Max coming out in January, what is the expected lifetime of drones as they're produced by Autel, and how long someone could expect to get that support?
This is a great question, and I can summarize it as long as we can. And there's a lot of questions to that answer, but let me just bring it into, again, perspective. So when any piece of equipment is released and we have, again, a number of support parts. When you crash your drone, how many parts are available for an extended amount of time? Do we keep producing those parts? We're right back to the manufacturing crunch of how many do you order based on an unknown of how many people are going to break it, or have questions about it. So it's an unknown and very, very difficult to predict on how that support's going to look. We do try our best to support something as long as we can, as long as we have those parts. In fact, according to my repair manager up in Bothell, we still have some parts to the EVO 1. We have some parts, and so it doesn't mean we totally shut it down, but not all parts are available for the EVO 1. But it's still kind of something that we can support to a degree. As you continue on, I mean, that was the EVO 1 was made years ago. Even X-Star questions come in all the time. You guys quit making this, or you're not making that. I remember being the sole distributor for HRP, is the company that was originally started with ARMUS, in 2014. As an 8-year-old drone, I don't know very many people that use 8-year-old phones today, 8-year-old phones. So So it doesn't mean that we shut it off and it's over. It's just on a hardware perspective, it could be very challenging besides firmware updates or whatever. But sometimes you hit those limitations of moving on to the next chipset, moving on to the next thing, that it feels like people are getting left in the dust with support. I have a personal goal, if you will, to get better our support, but I do need people's help in kind of getting feedback to me to gauge what that support is supposed to look like. Because some people just don't get somebody on the phone. So they say, you've got terrible support. And they might be asking a question of like, why do you guys paint it gray instead of orange now? But nobody, right. And that could be considered, well, they don't have any support. I do know that, you know, the repair team, the CS team, you know, answers thousands of tickets a day, thousands, not 100, not 20, thousands of tickets a day that are incoming from the world, not just the United States. They come from Canada, they come from LATAM, they come from Europe, and I'm certainly trying to make that my personal goal, is to improve the team and get better at least getting, you know, acknowledging that people are trying to get a hold of us initially, and then secondly, what is the resolution of the problem that you have?
100%.
You know, and I can only attribute that to, again, how many people do we have? Where's the incoming questions coming from? You know, are we charging too much for repair? You know, we don't know any of this. Everyone just says it just sucks. Well, that's really, really general. You know, that's, you know, help me understand and help my team understand where the true support problems lie, and then that helps out with improving it.
And this is a key point that, you know, one thing about the drone industry is that it requires a certain amount of care, and that means the individual on the other end caring. And I can attest, and John, who I trust as much as anyone in the drone space, can attest that it's not a lack of caring about the customer. It is a matter of bandwidth. It is a matter of clarity of what's being asked. And so right now on the screen, your email is on there. And what I would suggest to anyone that's here is use that to provide the feedback John's asking for. There are pathways for your support issues, for specific things that are better directed at people like Ken Booth or the CS team or the repairs team. But it is important that you get answers. And it's also important, as the drone industry evolves, that we have high levels of support and hear what things you're actually needing to be satisfied. Asking what color, why the color change or whatever, like that's not necessarily a high priority. But if you're needing something,
just a little insight on the call volume or the in volume, you know, we again, I said thousands of emails, calls, text, you know, whatever ways that we manage and close a ticket out, and almost 50% of those are challenges with our care program. You know, care program. It's not even the, you know, I broke my machine and I need help. It's overwhelming with the bandwidth on just a program that people don't know how to get it, you know, started, don't know how to get it done. So that does pull away from the resources I currently have to kind of put a little bit more caring, if you will, to more enterprise level questions. And in order to answer, you know, enterprise level questions, we have to have people that are skilled to answer those questions without having to ask for other people within our office on what to do. So that takes time as well. So please bear with me. It is a major high priority for me to get that sorted out, so that as these new products get released, we're not on the back end, you know, trying to take care of stuff. So I really am trying to work on that. I really do promise you this.
Well, John, as always, I appreciate your time. I have one more question I'm going to ask. I want to kind of do some wrap up. Before I do that, the recording of this webinar will be available. Give me like 24 hours to get it processed and then sent over to my guy to put it up on YouTube. I think that if you wait like an hour and come back into the webinar, there is a way to view the recording directly from GoToWebinar, but I don't quote me on that because I'm not really on the participant side of things to know that for sure. But give me 24 hours. I'll send an email out to everyone that attended with the recording, so you could revisit this later, or if you know, if there's other people that weren't able to catch it, this will be available. John, you are a friend for life. I mean, like, I appreciate everything you do for the community, for how much you have done in allowing this industry to grow and supporting people the right way. So I want to thank you for your time and going over. The last question I have is maybe more convoluted than it should be, but Nest. We haven't talked at all about Nest, and there's a few questions that come up. Can you just kind of give a rundown of what is the expectation from Autel Nest as of right now? When can it be seen? How is field testing gone? What is kind of your crystal ball for Nest in the US?
Well, we have 2 Nests. So if we wanted to clarify, we have at CES, yeah, we announced the drone in the box Nest support for the smaller quads. And then we had the big one for the Dragonfish Nest. And so the idea on both concepts is, again, to be able to create a way to do certain jobs in which the user does not have to physically pull out the drone, put it down on the ground, fly it around and do. Now, take the FAA regulations out of it right at this moment in time. And the conceptual idea is that we want to be able to operate in a way that, broadcasts all of the information that we're seeing, maybe even level of automation 110%, so that every day it goes and does, a human eye just looks at the video or data or imagery, and it flies back to a box and lands and stays there. Now, the drone in the box concept is nothing new. Everybody's kind of been asking for this, and I say everybody, meaning mostly utility, again, public safety. They've been asking for the concept. However, now we'll bring in the FAA. We're trying to work with, the best we can to try and get the regulations to fit to be able to even do this, but the idea has been here. We announced Nest last year for the EVO series, and we brought on a new form factor this year for the EVO series and the Max, kind of looking at this idea. Let's go over to the Dragonfish though. That is not something you're going to pick up with a couple of guys and move to a different location. That is going to be something that has to sit on a cement pad, probably have a friggin' cage around, a fence around it. It requires 240 volts, and the idea of that is to have that come in, land, dump data if needed, then go ahead and take off again. The one thing about the Dragonfish Nest that the other Nest doesn't do is change batteries for quick deployment over and over again. So the first one has to kind of sit, wait for charging to be done, then deploy again, where this has a little bit faster turnover for the time of landing to the time of taking off. And so happy to work with anybody that has this idea or this concept, and then kind of work a little bit with the regulation side, but as well showing the proof, utilizing a proof case or a use case for it rather, and proving that it works in their use case. So reach out to me if you not just ask what it is or how much it is, but give me a use case so I can start, positioning our Dragonfish nests for those types of things.
Perfect. Well, we still have like probably 40 more questions that we didn't get to. I will do my best to put a recap.
Let's go. Do it.
John, there's no way in hell, especially. The reason they're asking is because you are so knowledgeable and so detailed with everything, so that people know if they ask the question, they're going to get a very quality response. So it's great the amount of engagement that has come from this, but we will literally be here forever. So I'm going to take these questions. I'm going to put them in categories. I'm going to answer what I can. I'm going to send them to the Autel team, have them answer the things I don't know and validate what I said. This might take some time, and I go on vacation on this weekend for a week. So hopefully by the end of the week, I can get you responses to all the questions that were still there. Otherwise, know that is going to be something that you will receive at some point over the next.
Excellent. Well, I'm happy to be able to do that, and as you mentioned, a lot of detail on most of my answers, so I'm not very good at just yes, no, yes, no. So I apologize, but I appreciate your time, Randall, to be able to have us come on, get the, at least try to make it through a lot of the questions. I think that's primarily what people want, is that attention that comes back to the attention of CS and everything else as well. So I'm try to do as best as I can to try and help people out, make sure they're making the right decisions on the drone that they're purchasing, making sure that we don't, that we set expectations properly, and that's got to be our kind of mission and our way that we do work proceeding. So
definitely. Well, again, thanks to everyone for joining. This has been great by way of engagement and just us being able to do what we do has been very validating and gratifying for me. And John, thanks for your time as always, my man. And I'm sure we'll be doing something like this again in the near future. But you'll see some stuff from me to try to get these questions answered. And the recording will be available in the next 24 hours.
Thank you, sir.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.